I'm reading the end of the last chapter of How to Be a Pirate. And did you come up with a solution to how Hiccup and Fishlegs and Toothless got up from the inaccessible dragon cavern? I wonder if you did. The solution is quite simple if you ever find yourself in a similarly tricky situation. A dragon's breath, even when it exhales, is composed almost entirely of pure oxygen. It is this that makes it so very flammable. All they needed to do was to rise to the surface slowly, as not to get the bends, which is this thing you get if you go up too quickly through water, with Toothless swimming beside them and occasionally blowing into their noses when they ran out of breath. A dragon, you see, never runs out of breath because just below its horns it has a fully working set of gills, and as soon as it enters the sea it can shut off its lungs and get its oxygen from the water rather than the air. So very clever, so almost using it like it's a sort of aqua lung or something. Very clever. Hiccup and Fishlegs resurfaced after about 10 minutes. There was plenty of debris floating around because they were not far from where the Lucky 13 had made its final journey to the bottom of the ocean. The boys each got hold of one end of an oar and steered their way around the corner to where there was a beach to land on. Fishlegs tried to persuade Hiccup to change his mind about telling everybody about the treasure all the way home. At last, he said in exasperation, "You're never going to be a hero with this attitude. How can you be a hero with no one to cheer and no one to clap?" Okay then, Hiccup sighed. "I'll never be a hero. All I know is that I'm supposed to be the future leader of this tribe, and I want there to be a tribe left to lead. And that seems to me to be more important than being a hero." So they staggered through the heather towards the hooligan village, which was strangely silent and deserted. No smoke curled from the rooftops, no children quarrelled in the streets, no dragons were fighting in the thatch. "Please, please, good God, Woden," prayed Hiccup, "please let everyone be alive." Everybody was alive. Miraculously, no one had drowned during the sinking of the Lucky 13. The hooligans sailed the heavily overloaded hammerhead back to Berk, with the outcasts tied up as their pit prisoners. With typical generosity, they set the outcasts free. I feared the outcasts were not as grateful as they should have been, and this would not be the last the hooligans would see of these vicious people. For the moment, however, they returned to the outcast lands humiliated, unarmed, and with a hunger for revenge. The hooligans were not in much better shape themselves. They were a hardy race, and drowning was an occupational hazard, but the loss of the only son of the chief was a big blow, whether he was the heir or not. Oh dear, they think Hiccup is dead, you see. Stoic sat for an hour at the edge of the sea. As soon as Snotlike treasure had disappeared beneath the waves, it had lost its magic for him. He kept on seeing in his mind's eye his son, Hiccup, standing on the deck of the Lucky 13 saying, "I am the heir to Stoic the Vast." Stoic tore out his golden earrings and threw them into the ocean, and then he went home and sat in front of his shrine to Woden. So this was why, when Fishlegs, Hiccup and Toothless came stumbling and limping into the hooligan village, everyone had locked themselves indoors. The shutters were shut up, the doors were closed, fires were unlit. I think that they're dead. It was only a chance that the wooden window had blown open in Gobber the Welch's house. He went to close it and happened to spot the bedraggled friends lurching along, and then he let out a great bellow of "They're alive!" A shout went from house to house like watchfires lighting from hill to hill, and the hairy hooligans rushed out of their front doors like a crowd of jubilant sea elephants, and they swooped on the three companions and they lifted them onto their their muscly shoulders with great happy shouts of "They're alive! They're alive! They're alive!" Snotlike was already furious to find that people had been more concerned about mourning Hiccup and Fishlegs than congratulating him on being the hero of the hour on the Isle of the Scullions. Imagine how cross he was to run out of his house in curiosity at the commotion, to find himself barged out of the way by Gobble the Belch and Nobber No-Brains, and practically trampled into the ground by a clapping mob carrying Hiccup shoulder high through the village. Hiccup, who was quite clearly yet again not drowned, not dead, not safely out of the way. The happy hooligans reached the door of their chieftain's house and banged on it, crying, "Open up, they're alive, they're alive!" Stoic the Vast lifted his great hairy head as if he was dreaming, staggered to the door, and there on the doorstep was his son, Hiccup. Stoic the Vast, terror of the seas, most high ruler of the hairy hooligans, oh, hear his name and tremble, Agard picked up his son and hugged him, while the crowd cheered and cheered. There they are. Big hug. And that was how Toothless found and lost a marvellous treasure all in the space of an afternoon, and how Hiccup finally got himself a sword and learnt how to use it, and how Fishlegs discovered that you don't always have to be a hero to get a hero's welcome. Now, this is the epilogue by Hiccup. This is Hiccup talking, looking back as an old man. And he says, a few months afterwards, he had a dream. There's a picture of a pirate ship there. A few months afterwards, I had a dream. It was a dream about shipwrecks, perhaps because I had been doing a lot of that lately. The ship was called the Endless Journey, and just before it disappeared beneath the waves, the ferocious-looking captain, who had a strange smile on his face, threw a sword up into the air. It spun end to end over the waves, through the atmosphere and into space and stars and never-ending time, where, to my surprise, my own left hand sprang out of its own accord and caught it. As soon as I awoke, I got up and brought out that uninspiring sword that Toothless had picked for me in the Cavern of the Treasure, the one with which I had fought Alvin the Treacherous. I turned it over and over and inspected the dull little object for quite half an hour, and eventually I found that by twisting and twisting it, the knob at the end of the sword fell off, and there was a small piece of paper inside the handle of the sword, rolled up in a little hollowed-out compartment inside. A small fragment of paper on which was written the following words: "The last will and testament of Grimbeard the Ghastly." And it says, "I leave to my true heir this my favourite sword, because the Stormblade always lunged a little to the left, and the best is not always the most obvious. Yours, in the hope that you will make a better leader than I am, Grimbeard the Ghastly." So that happened a long time ago when Hiccup was a young boy, but now I am an old man, says Hiccup, the same age as Grimbeard the Ghastly when he got his dragons to swim down to the cavern with the treasure. Toothless and Fishlegs and I have kept the secret of what really happened on that terrible day all those years ago. But because I'm writing my memoirs, I find I have to write it down, as it is such an important part of my journey to becoming a hero, even though I know I will never be able to show it to anyone in my own time. As soon as I have finished writing these papers, I shall lock them in a box. I shall throw that box into the sea, and I shall throw it hoping, like Grimbeard the Ghastly, that someday it may be found by someone who will be a better leader than I have been. Someone living way, way in the future, in times more civilized than those in which I have lived, where men can own beautiful and dangerous things and use them wisely. So that's the end of the second chapter. How to be a pirate in the How to Train Your Dragon series. That's the second book in the series. And it ends with this: surely that would be the last that Hiccup would see of that wicked villain, Alvin the Treacherous. I mean, his grim hook sunk to the bottom of the ocean with the wreck of the Lucky 13. He himself was last seen struggling in the throat of a monstrous strangulator in an inaccessible cavern, deep underground. Nobody could get out of that situation alive. Or could they? Look out for the next volume of Hiccup's memoirs, How to Speak Dragonese. So I want you to be thinking about that. How on earth could Alvin the Treacherous get out of the monstrous strangulator's stomach and get out of the cavern? He doesn't have a dragon. You be thinking about that, you clever people. How could Alvin the Treacherous get out of that? And suddenly we begin to see the meaning of the King's Lost Things. Suddenly I'm looking back to the beginning of this book and realising that Hiccup might be finding these things for a reason. Join Hiccup on his quest. At the beginning, you see, I'm going back to the beginning. It says, join Hiccup on his quest, though he doesn't quite realise he's on a quest yet. The prophecy of the king's lost things. The dragon time is coming, and only a king can save you now. The king shall be the champion of champions. You shall know the king by the king's lost things. A fang-free dragon, my second best sword, my Roman shield, an arrow from the land that does not exist, the heartstone, the key that opens all locks, the ticking thing, the throne, the crown, and last and best of all, the 10, the dragon jewel, shall save all men. That's interesting, isn't it? Because Hiccup has now he's found the fang-free dragon in the first book, in this one, in How to Train Your Dragon. In the second one, he has found the second best sword. The third one, can he find? He now has 2 of the king's lost things. Will he discover them all? Find out in his next adventure. How to speak Dragonese. The Roman shield, can he find that? And how is Alvin the Treacherous going to get out of that situation? We'll have to find out in How to Speak Dragonese, the 3rd of his memoirs. Thank you.